Hey friends, welcome to the WeddingPros podcast. My name is Jared, and before we hop into today's episode, I just wanted to remind you that you can find us on YouTube and anywhere that you can find podcasts. We're on both, so if you're sitting by your desktop, you want to see our pretty faces, make sure you tune in YouTube, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And if you're in your car, you can of course tune in to the WeddingPros podcast. Give us a 5-star review, guys. It's super helpful to us when we get feedback from you. Helps us with the YouTube algorithm, also helps us with the podcasting world algorithms as well. And it just gets the word out to other wedding creatives that there's a great resource for them to be able to have a thriving wedding creative business. So make sure you're checking that out. Today we have a fantastic episode. It's just Jay and I, but we talk about staying inspired through COVID-19, through a pandemic, and despite having hardships, ways that you can stay inspired. It's actually a really great episode. I think it's one of the best episodes that Jay and I have recorded just one-on-one. So you're going to want to check out through the very end. It's good to the very end, if you can believe it. Make sure you check it out, and we'll see you on the other side.
Hey, Jared. So what's keeping you sane during the Corona quarantine?
What's keeping me sane? Man, I think we're just doing a lot of walks, a lot of book reading, a lot of just things that usually I probably wouldn't have time to do. We actually are carving out a little bit of time to make those happen. Actually playing a lot of Call of Duty, Modern Warfare. Have you been playing video games? I know you had kind of carved that out of your life.
I feel like I have not had any free time. I haven't done anything relaxing.
Yeah.
This has been the most... It's so much harder to manage people remotely.
Oh my God, yeah.
And so that's been a challenge and a new kind of experience.
Yep.
And then, cooking. I'm cooking every night. I have a 2-year-old. So, I was talking with Jonathan Snyder, and he was like, man, 2-year-old, no daycare. It's like, I'm working, but I'm not working. I was talking actually with Alex Douglas as well, and he's like, same thing. Because all of us are like, oh, I'm working, but I'm not working.
Yeah.
I feel like I can't get anything done. So
yeah.
I think for me, figuring out how the heck to I don't know how people do the work from home thing.
Yeah.
Hats off to you if you do that.
I think that's probably a majority of the people that listen are working from home. And
yeah, I don't know how they do it though.
I know a ton of people that are like, I can have an office from home, and I do have an office from home, but I also spend $500 to just get away from my family for it's just at least 6 hours a day.
You're creatively inspired in a more creative environment.
Yep.
Right? Your house is a different environment for me. It's a relaxing environment. And so I like to be in an environment that inspires me or makes me focus on one thing. And so, honestly, one of the things we want to talk about today was pretty much that, which is staying inspired, right? In the middle of I guess anytime that's kind of uninspiring, right? Which I think a lot of us, coronavirus or not, we experience periods of dry seasons. You ever felt like you're just creatively just spent?
Yeah. The creatively, it's usually
you don't have any good ideas.
Just spent in general. Yeah, totally. I find that probably to be more the case as a manager. As a person that's just when you're always solving problems, right? Which actually, I think a lot of creativity is really just solving problems, right? Making something actually work. That's probably when I'm most drained. People come to me and be like, what do you want to do about this certain situation, this social situation with a client? And I'm just I'm out, man. I just need to come back at this tomorrow with a fresh head and have a good meal, have a good sleep, and then come back at this later on.
Well, I think the topic is relevant, obviously, because of most people's current living conditions.
Yeah.
But I think it's also relevant just because I think this is just where people are at every year. We talk about burnout, right? Every year. Yep. For those of us that live in cold weather seasons, by the time September, October hits, we're beat, we're tired. Whatever it is in your particular context, I think the idea of getting burnt out, feeling uncreative, feeling uninspired. I think all of us have to deal with it and have to struggle with it. And so I've been trying to think of like, what are some ways that I can maintain inspiration and stay inspired in the middle of uninspiring times, in the middle of an environment that's very uninspiring, 2-year-old running in, working in I'm a person of habit and pattern. Like I like my space to be a certain way. Like just setting up this podcast. I don't know where my stuff is. Like I want to be in a place where I know I go and I grab the thing and it works and I know exactly how much time it takes to do it. and so on one hand, I find that very disruptive. But on another hand, I find it kind of inspiring. And I was thinking about that. I was like, what does it mean to be inspired and be creative? Is it just like what I create, or is it how you think? I think how do we maintain inspiration in the middle of these crazy times is really, I think, hopefully some people are tapping into that. I think we kind of are. And so I kind of wanted to talk about that today is like, what are we doing in the middle of this? How is this causing us to be creative? And then how can we use these lessons in a later date? Because, we're not always going to be in quarantine, and hopefully we can stay inspired and keep problem solving. So,
yeah, I think probably the thing, or one of the things that's keeping me inspired right now, and I think you're right. Just thinking about like inspiration is like jet fuel, right? Like when you're inspired, it's like doesn't matter. Like typically, I'm the type of person that's going to be like, I need to just be doing this one very specific thing, and if someone interrupts it, I'm angry with them because I'm such like a one-track mind type of person. Like probably more than you probably make fun of me because I'm like that, and my wife certainly does. But when I'm doing one very specific thing, if it's editing, if it's shooting, if it's like something that I'm just concentrating on, if someone breaks that pattern, I'm like, it's hard for me to get back into that kind of stream of consciousness of just like, I need to be left alone for hours to be able to accomplish something kind of big. And so being inspired, I think it's been hard, but the thing that's been easy is there are a couple things lately that have been super inspiring to me, and I'm like, it doesn't matter what's going on, like because I can focus back on that one very specific thing.
Well, yeah, the like, problem is forcing you to be creative, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's forcing you, and I think like that was one of the. If I was like to give someone a tip, which no one asked me, but if I was giving someone a tip on how to be inspired, it's like look for problems that you want to solve. Mm-hmm. And then try to solve them. Yeah. And it'll force you to think of creative solutions. And that could be like financially, it could be the product you're creating. I mean, this is more of an entrepreneur thing. It's not just like, am I making good images? But like, are you a planner? You need inspiration. Are you running a venue? You need inspiration. Of course, if you're creating images, you need inspiration. But like, figuring out where the problems are coming from and then figuring out how to make them go away almost. Or where's the opportunity coming from? How do I claim it? Like, I think those are the real things. Problems and opportunities. It's like, what problem do I need to solve and what opportunity do I have to claim? And then how can I do it? And I think by nature, if you approach your business in those two ways, you will have to be creative, and probably you will be creative.
Yeah. I think right now things can go one of two ways. I think if you're creative, and I've spoken to people kind of on both sides, and then I feel like myself, I've been one of these two people at some point in the last month and a half. Like, the coronavirus can either take you a direction where you're just like super depressed, right? And you're just like, screw this. Like, I'm not going to shoot weddings for the next 6 months. I'm probably not going to shoot a wedding until May of 2021. And it's really easy to go down that path of being super uninspired, not seeing any kind of reward, just being like, this is just going to beat me up and I can do literally nothing about it. And when you feel like you can't do anything about something, like that just drains every part of your body. Like it drains everything out of you.
Seriously. Yeah, creatively is based on hope, right?
Yeah. And then the other direction, and this is like, I'm an Enneagram 3, so I'm always like scheming about like, my head is always in the future. It's not like what we're going through now. like my wife is very much like now, never in the future. But I'm always like, well, this is problem solving. And for me, I'm the type of person that's just like, I want to work really hard and I want to be rewarded really hard. So it's like, I'm finding ways that is like, how can I reward myself through this? What are some ways that I can actually get through this? And that's the thing that really focuses me, because I'm like, how can I be the person that shoots out of this situation positively? Like, because I know a lot of people are going to go that other direction.
Evaluating what the opportunities are is really where it starts, right? And like, so I would say this, like, maintaining inspiration in the middle of times that are very uninspiring is a matter of perspective, because I don't think that's really, there's no really such thing as a time that's uninspiring. Like, there's just rigid thinking that keeps you stuck in a perspective. But a big shift in your paradigm really actually is the genesis of inspiration, in my opinion. Like, when you are forced to do something uncomfortable, the only way to get through it is creativity. Like, you think about survival, right? And this is how I think of creativity. At the beginning of all creativity is the concept of necessity, of like, I need to do this or I won't survive.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's like, cavemen making tools and people inventing all kinds of solutions for all kinds of things is like, came from people who viewed it as necessary.
Yeah.
And so I think when you look at a challenge like this, like, how can you create necessity in your business? So for us, we looked at it and we said, like, okay, if we don't, first of all, we had these contracts that were due in these months, and we had to come up with a solution for that, which would not only serve our clients and make them feel taken care of, but also let us take care of our employees and take care of ourselves and our families. And so we had a creative solution for the couples, which was, all right, you can reschedule these dates because this doesn't hurt us too much. We're going to give you these dates with no rescheduling fee because we can and we can afford it. We have to charge a rescheduling fee for these dates. And like, we had to get creative there, right? Out of necessity to survive. And then we started looking, and because we kept looking at the problem, and we said, all right, well, how do we grow from this? Because I'm always I'm not going to settle for just surviving. And I don't think you should either if you're listening to this. Like, you should figure out how to turn any opportunity into an opportunity and don't just make it by the skin of your teeth. So we said, okay, what are the needs going to be that come from this crisis? So if you're looking and how do I be creative, looking for what are the needs that are going to exist in this situation, from whether it be a creative solution that you have for like a problem a client might have, like, oh, I want light and airy. That's a problem. I want light and airy photography. How do I meet this solution? For us, we were like, there's going to be a lot of weddings where the people are going to reschedule. Their creative won't be able to reschedule with them because they're booked already. And then the client's going to be going, oh, shoot, I lost my deposit, so my budget's cut. So they're not going to have as much money to spend on the creative. And so we were like, well, is there something we can make for these people to help our planners out? And like, who knows? Maybe that's an opportunity. Maybe we're just helping people out. We're not sure. But I think like this creativity for our business has come out of looking at the problem and then looking at where are the opportunities in the problem, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And a lot of times, like I've been watching a lot of really old films, and I've mentioned it on the podcast. Alex Douglas has inspired me since Vision Quest last year, talking about all these old 70s movies. And I'm like, you know what? I need to go back and watch a lot of these movies. And a lot of people take inspiration from Kubrick. They take inspiration from all those old film directors. And, but you think about Kubrick, and Kubrick wasn't doing things for the sake of creativity. He was doing things for the sake of a need and solving a problem, right? That was when filmmaking was like super hard to actually do. So the reason why he did certain things was really, in a lot of cases, to hide certain things, or maybe come at a certain problem, or maybe he was able to solve a problem that past filmmakers weren't actually able to solve, right? So whether it's shooting, whether it's scripting, getting people to interact a certain way, creativity is often inspired by circumstance. So it's like, I think seeing it yourself as a problem solver is probably the first step. Like, there's a lot of artists out there, I think, that are just like, oh, I want to be a great filmmaker. I'm going to do lens flare. It's just like, that's not really creativity. That's just a paint piece of, it's a paintbrush in your,
It's like who
set.
has the best color.
Yeah.
Like literally
yeah.
who has the best color on their palette. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
this is red. Don't you like red?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, you're not.
Sure.
It's good. You should have red. You should know how to use red. But
You're not going to be DaVinci. Yeah.
Well, you're not innovating by knowing about the color red.
Exactly. And I mean, DaVinci is a great example too. The guy was just a problem solver all the time. And so he was able to take the work that he did with, developing like flying machines and then directly apply it to the work that he did, in his paintings and his work. It's just like finding ways to solve problems and creatively solving problems. I think it definitely works with like the way that we're approaching our new kind of higher end Huxley films, Jay, because you and I are just like, I wouldn't say, I look at Alex, I look at Ray, I look at Henry, and I'm just like, they are so creative and talented in the way that they edit, the way that they do all these things. And then I think I can't really get there. The way that they think about things, and they're just like, Alex is like, and Whitney actually is like an art major. So she has all this depth of knowledge from the art world, and they take that and they put it in their films. I just don't have that. And I do have a lot of appreciation for a lot of historically prevalent artists that are.
I mean, we're not like real filmmakers,
Yeah, well, I mean,
like we haven't made feature films. We haven't done that stuff. We don't.
Yes, but I think we've been able to take our understanding of problem solving into our filmmaking with Huxley, and that's why I like doing Huxley film so much. Is just like, here are these problems, throughout the day. Typically, when we work with a bride and groom, we're working with a photographer, and the photographer wants all the time to shoot his photos, and we typically have to shoot over the shoulder, and then maybe we get the scraps. How can we solve that problem?
Well,
okay, we're going to take them in a separate room.
Even with that, right? The guy might go, "Oh, I have this look I like. That's not our look."
Yeah.
Even if he's like, "Oh yeah," he's like, "Oh, I just want to take them into this dumb alleyway," and we're like, "I hate this alleyway. I don't want to shoot in this alleyway." It doesn't mean I care. I'm not bothered by his photos, but it's no offense to that individual, but it isn't what we're looking to do.
You have two artists trying to solve different problems. So it's like, how do we actually get what we want that we think actually solves the problem of getting good footage and telling the story the way that we think it deserves to be solved? It's just, hey, the photographer's going to shoot. Like the last wedding that we shot, we didn't even work with the photographer. We just, hey, at this time, we're going to want to shoot with you guys. We don't care what you guys want to do with them. He's going to put you in crappy lighting and use flash. We're not able to use that. So that's kind of, I don't know, what I've been learning about inspiration and just trying to find ways to become inspired is just basics problem solve. Looking at the end goal as opposed to just looking what's like on your screen in the moment. It's like, where are we trying to go? What are we trying to get to? And I think it applies to businesses. It's funny because like I see a lot of like this is a time, right, for us creatives to really shine and show our creativity is like through a hardship like this. How are you going to be creative not only with the art that you create, but also how are you going to be creative with surviving through this hard time? I think it's a good challenge for every person.
Well, and
it's
not good enough to only be good at creating one thing. And I think like every artist needs to get to that place in their creativity where they expand their definition of what it means for them to be creative.
Yeah.
And as an entrepreneur, as a family person, as a friend, and of course as a, whatever your craft is, right? And like I like food a lot. And when I look for inspiration, one of the things I look at is food. And I think we can apply a lot of these techniques to our own inspiration. Like when you see a really innovative chef, usually they're taking something super familiar, right? Like an ingredient you or your wife might use every day. It's not a new ingredient. and they're not looking to add new ingredients. What they're looking to do is, how do I use this ingredient in a different way? In a way that other people haven't thought of, in a way that will amaze people and inspire people and impress people. And that's actually part of the experience for you, is like you go and you're like, oh, this is peas. I don't like peas. I don't want peas. And then this person's like, yeah, you do. Check this out. One of my favorite things is when someone dry ages eggs. And they age these eggs, and they make, like, basically it's like cheese. You like grind it onto like salads, and it's like, that's an egg. It's just an egg. Yeah. I like eggs. They're good. But why am I impressed by this? Because I'm used to it and I'm seeing it in a different way. And like chefs do that all the time, right? To the point where it's pretentious and irritating. You're like, dude, just give me this steak. I don't.
What was that dish that you had? Didn't you eat like concrete ice cream somewhere?
Yeah. I went to a restaurant and the guy gave me concrete. And at the end, it was gelatinized concrete. It was a cube. And I was like, what is this? He's like, oh, it's concrete. It was this huge tasting menu. It was like a 12-course tasting menu.
Yeah.
Finish it off with a piece of concrete. Last thing I literally ate at this restaurant. And I'm like, concrete? Why?
Did you go behind the scenes and just punch the chef right in the nose?
No, the guy goes, he's like, you can eat it. I was like, I'm not questioning whether it's going to kill me. I'm saying just because I can do it doesn't mean I should do it. I don't want to do it. So like, I don't mean being creative like that, like saying like nobody's ever shot a camera no one's ever shot a wedding with the camera just hanging off their neck on the strap. Like, yeah. Okay, yeah, no one's ever done that because it's a stupid idea. We're not talking about that. I think just figuring out like what is something you can do that does offer a unique perspective, that solves a problem, and allowing the problem to be the inspiration to the solution. Instead of viewing challenging situations as these negative, terrible things, allow them to be your muse, as they say. And it's like, okay, how do we do that? How do we do that? And I think you referenced it in there, and I think this is like the point where I would want to like drive home. It's like, how do people know what they really want to do? Where do they want to go? Like, how do people get to that? Because I think at the core of it all is always like knowing what you want.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're asking me, actually.
I'm making a reference, I mean.
Yeah,
conversing about it.
Man, that's such. I think it's a hard question because it is broad, but I think when it comes to,
but am I right? Like that's the basis of creativity, right?
Yeah. Is where are we going? Like I reference like, well, we know what we're trying to do with a film, but how do we know what we're trying to get to as far as like, a film? And I think when it comes to filmmaking, and I think when it comes to photography as well, at the end of the day, it's all about people and telling people's story. People, like when I was in film school, the director of the program would always reference and say, people care about people. People care about people. That is, as an artist, think about the best images. Immediately I think of Ben Chaish, I think of Jose Villa, and the images that always come to mind are people laughing and being the most themselves that they can be in those images. It's just pure joy, and people looking at those images care about those people, and even if it's just in the smallest kind of way. So I think as artists we can talk about that too, but creatives kind of in this space, I think that's what we should be striving for, because that's what we're trying to express is
well, ultimately
people's exuberance.
Exactly
right?
What you're saying, right? Natalie Denice from In Good Company PR. She always, I never referred it as this, but I think it's the right term, and I use it now, which is like calling the weddings industry the celebrations industry.
Yeah, I love that. Oh man, I love that.
And really, like, we're in a celebrations industry, so I expanded any party, anything. We're in a party industry. If there's anything coronavirus will tell you is like, this is just a party. We're just talking about parties. We can't have parties, and that's why we can't have weddings. To the point where it's like, technically they could still get married and no one wants to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they want to have a party. That's what we're serving. And so, like, okay, where am I trying to get? I'm trying to get to a place if you're a photographer, where when people look at my images, they think about, good feelings, a party, romance, love, whatever you think you best communicate with your images. And maybe certain people's values are different, and the way that they like to think about weddings is different. But I think in general, right, like, you're really just talking about, like, creating a sense of celebrations in your images. And so, like, and this is just my opinion. This might not be yours, but I'm trying to give someone a place to start. Where am I trying to get? Well, okay, I'm trying to make my images communicate a party and communicate a celebration. Does that mean, like, a party, like, I don't know, some, like, crunk, like, high school celebration, or like this wild Miami thing? No, not necessarily. Like, I think that's where personal taste and preference comes from. But, like, you got to give yourself, my point is only this. You have to start somewhere with who you are and what you do well. And I think knowing yourself is the key to being able to tackle problems very quickly. Mm-hmm. Is like when we were looking at all of our stuff, right? And we were like, hey, what can we make? How do we expand our business? Well, we need different streams of revenue. We need different client bases. We need different products. It really started with, could I make this?
Yep.
Like, and then we're like, I don't know. I don't know if we're good enough. The first thing we did is try to figure out if we were good enough to create a product that would compete in that luxury market.
Yeah. And I think we also said that this is something that I actually wanted to watch.
Yeah, it would be fun.
I was interested in, because we were like, you watch a wedding film and you feel like you see someone, but I rarely ever feel like I actually know that person and hear their heart and hear their story, right? A lot of times it's the same exact story because it's the same exact film. They got ready, they got married, and it's a party. Yeah. So how can we tell a story that's a little bit different that really makes you feel like you get to know this couple and care about this couple and get drawn into their story? At the end of the day, it's mainly for the couple, right? So it's like, I want them to listen to that and watch that, and I want their family to listen to that and watch that and just have such deep connection and feelings for them.
And I was more concerned with, how do I create these images?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Will they hold up? Mm-hmm. Do I need to be shooting some epic wedding that, I don't know, a 4-day wedding in Asia to create an image that is actually high-end looking? Mm-hmm. And because if I felt like if that was the case, it's not something we would be able to get going anytime soon. Mm-hmm. And so what is the common denominator with beautiful images? Is it, obviously it's the shooters, it's the pre-production, it's the people, it's the party, but can we do it without all of those things being totally aligned? And I felt like we got to try.
Yeah.
We got to see what does it take to make a quote unquote luxury wedding? And that was a thing where that was our problem, right? Our problem was, okay, we've made Stop Go Love for 10 years and we know exactly how to make it, and it's uninspiring because I don't want to say it's a perfect product, because everything can get better and we're always looking to improve, but it's incredibly marketable and people love it. We don't need to really change it in order to continue to make money or continue to create art. Yeah. And so, and you might not even want to change it because it just works and you don't get much out of changing it. But we know as artists, we want to keep growing and being inspired. And so we're like, what's the next thing we can work on?
Yep. If we changed it, it would really just be about us, right? It would be about like, I'm bored with it. Therefore, we should change it because I'm bored with it and I want to do something else. So as opposed to changing something that works that might, ruin the special chemistry that you have, or narrow the field of or the demographic that you're trying to market to. It was
Yeah.
like, well, let's just create something new. Let's make something
Yes.
completely different. Keep this, and then launch something completely different. See if we can do it. Let's turn ourselves into students again, and see if we can do this.
Yeah,
Which
and
is
that was
fun.
the problem. That was the problem that inspired it. Was this is a boring product to me, like to the point where it's like I don't even need to make it.
Yeah.
Other people make it or can make it. We still make it. We still shoot them, but we wouldn't have to.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, that's a problem. I want to be a maker. I want to keep creating things. I want to get involved in that and not be sitting there going stagnant. I don't think I can be a good creative leader if I'm not innovating in my company. I need to know what is going on. I need to be at the bleeding edge. And so that was us. If you're listening, that was just our journey of like, how did we find a way to be creative? Because I consider like having a successful company is kind of a prison.
Oh, it's completely.
Like, because every time we talk about doing anything interesting, we're always like, why? What's the point? Or
Yeah.
what if people don't like it?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
and that was our problem, which is a weird problem to have, right?
Yeah, I think so. Because it's just, I don't know. It's like I think like anything you can probably relate it to the music industry. It's like, the music label likes your last album and they're like, just do that times 2, and the artist is like, well, I already made that. Like, I don't want to do that again. And then they make the same album another time, and it's not as good, and it's just kind of like whatever. And I don't know. The artist isn't fulfilled through all of that, I think, because it's not solving those problems. Again, it's being creative is all about just solving problems, like and accomplishing goals.
You got to be moving the needle somewhere. You can't just be. And I think so I guess my question to you is, what have you been learning in the middle of all this about your own? What inspires you? What additional things have you been learning? And it doesn't have to just be coronavirus. It could just be over the last year or so. What have you been learned about how to stay inspired personally?
Well, okay. So yeah, I think first and foremost, it's finding new challenges, finding things that will keep you sharp. We always talk about a lot of videographers, no matter what kind of creative you are, if you're plateauing and if you are super complacent and you're like, I already know how to do that. I already know how to make wedding films. I already know how to do this, this, and this. It's like, you're not inspired. You're not in a stage of inspiration. But a lot of people get comfortable there because they're just like, they are in their, they have their safety blanket on, and they don't have to. And also, a lot of people are very prideful too. In our industry,
think they've like perfected something.
Yeah,
there's nothing that could be better.
I would say a lot of people probably think you and I are pretty prideful, but when it comes to our business, I feel like I'm very confident, but I don't feel like I have everything figured out. But I feel like it's my duty to share with people the things that we've learned because I actually care about the health of our company, which I think is fueled by the health of our industry in general. So it's like, if I can help people through this and share, hey, we've done this very, very successful business thing, you should try it too. That's kind of where, I think my responsibility is to the community in general. But yeah, I think just to answer your question, just finding things that you suck at, bro. Like,
I was about to say the same thing. Is like, for me, that's been a weirdly surprising, even though it doesn't surprise me because there's a thing out there which is called the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Oh yeah, you mentioned this before.
Yeah, it's huge, and I think it's like it's a psychological trick that keeps us inspired, which is like, you start out terrible and in blissful ignorance, right? That you're awesome at something. And I think that's the feeling a lot of people would call inspiration, right? Which is like,
totally.
your confidence peaks early on in a project before you've actually gotten good. And they call it like the peak. And then there's like this valley of despair and then a slope of enlightenment. So you have this quick peak, right? And I think that's the feeling a lot of people describe as inspiration. But you only get that by starting things you suck at.
Mm-hmm.
You get that peak of inspiration by starting something and actually just getting a little bit of success and making a little progress and getting a little traction. And I think like finding something that you're terrible at, that you've always wanted to do, will be super inspiring, because you will, the second you get like a modicum of success, like you feel totally validated. And so like inspiration, usually what most people mean is excitement about what I'm making.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so when I say inspiration, I say, how do I know what I should and could make? Right?
Mm-hmm.
How do I get inspired what I should and I could make? And that's usually informed by our experiences. But like this idea of like, oh, what do I suck at? That's a great way to know what you should and could make. Because if you can get better at it, it reasons to see that there's going to be more opportunities and more fulfillment, right?
Yeah. I always see people say like, well, that's good for you to be able to do that. And like specifically when it comes to running a business, like you guys can do that. I'm not built that way. And there's something about that always really irks me, because I'm like,
it's so dumb.
Dude, if you had, well, it's just like people don't realize the potential. I was talking to my wife about it. Like people don't realize, because I was like, we were talking about businesses and people that start their own businesses, right? And I was like, at the end of the day, anyone can start their own business. Anyone who says they can't start their own business, they're not giving themselves enough credit. Like,
no, they haven't tried, probably.
They haven't tried, and just like, but that's the reason why people, I guess the reason why people don't try hard things is because they're freaking hard, especially at first. There's that curve of like, when you're first learning something, you learn quickly, kind of that Dunning-Kruger effect that you mentioned. You learn a lot.
And you
quickly,
think you're the best, by the way. That's the real thing.
You have to spend a lot of time learning that and going up that curve, but because you're willing to toil with that and like go against the grain of just like, I don't understand this. I don't understand this. Because you're fighting that, that's the reason why you launch and you learn so much so quickly. And then, like you said, you kind of hit that peak. But it's like that first learning. I think I watched a TED Talk and they were talking about learning new talents. And they said, you can learn anything in 20 hours. You can learn 80% of probably anything in 20 hours. If you were willing to invest 20 hours in guitar playing and anything, you could play a song.
If you're a photographer and you're listening to this, you can learn to make very good films in 2 days.
Yes.
You can't learn to be great, and there's a million situations you will suck at still, because I can tell you left and right what you should be doing. Until you have to do it, you won't be able to. But like, you can learn to make decent stuff, but it really comes down to, just doing it, right? And I think a lot of people, they don't look for inspiration, right? They just look for reasons why. Most people are just freaking lazy. This is my opinion. Most people are lazy and they don't want to work hard, and they're totally comfortable. Like instead of going, I am the reason I'm not successful. I'm the reason I'm not doing well. I'm the reason I'm not prepared for coronavirus with my business. I'm the reason why I can't. Like, it's freaking all your fault, bro, or lady, or whoever's listening. It's all your fault. And you could say that. I would think it'd be better for you if you would just assume that that's true, even if it's not true, and try to change it, than just trying to figure out saying it's not. No, it isn't my fault because this and this and this. And like, we're proof positive that you don't need to have all your crap together, and that if you're willing to look at even a problem in your personality or in your skill set, that's going to be the beginning of how your business should look and where are the opportunities. And it's like, if you're terrible at sales, get good systems. It'll help you. If you're disorganized, get good systems, right? Look at the thing you suck at. And if you're sitting right now at your home and you're in the middle of coronavirus quarantine, and you're like, oh, well, I can't shoot photos. I can't host events. I can't be innovative. I can't be creative because I create photos. I create videos and I'm not able to make those right now. So I can't be creative. It's like, you don't know, like I see a weakness right there. The weakness is you have limiting thinking and you don't understand what it takes to run a business. You should go take a business class because read a book about something. Your terrible way of thinking about your own business is hurting you somewhere. I promise you. And it's like, we're proof positive of that because we have a lot of flaws that would make us unsuited for running a successful business. But we've been able to use those things as strengths, whether it be working together, me and you. And like, we don't always agree, but I don't think we have this terrible relationship. We don't have all this conflict all the time. We'll approach a problem totally differently, but we both know where we're headed with it. So we've had people that get complementary people around you, or just like build your business around what you suck at or what you're good at, and look for those areas that you suck at. Those are opportunities to innovate and be creative.
Yeah. So what kind of, we're talking about how to find inspiration, all these kind of things. What are some actual things that you are being inspired by through this time when it comes to our business? Because I certainly have a couple that I think are
I mean, I
relevant.
think for me, I love editing. That's my first love. And just, that's a good thing I'm being inspired by right now, which is learning some new techniques, working on some new styles of editing, and being inspired by how hard it is for me right now, and feeling like, because I'm going back to Final Cut Pro, and like every time I go back and forth, I'm like, oh, this is why I suck. Because like Final Cut Pro, I'm so good in it, and it's so fast, and it's like an extension of my body. But every time I get into Resolve, everything is so hard for me. It's like I'm grinding. And I'm like, probably the first 2 months of doing it, and if you listen to the podcast, you know I've been complaining about this for a while. The first couple months of using Resolve, I couldn't see anything inspiring about it. And I was like, I know I have to just push through this and learn it. And I will come up with ways of using this tool in ways that I couldn't use the other tool. And I've been finding that to be true. As I'm learning this tool, it's creating new pathways in my brain on how to come up, like even just, hey, next time we shoot, Jared, I need you guys to do this. Because this is how this tool works, and it will make it easier and better, and we'll get a better result. And I think like that's what is inspiring me now, is learning something new and hard and having to like rewire my brain and remake my brain. And then I think the other thing that's inspiring me is just the business challenges of like having to be a future teller, and like having to look and go, where's this industry going to be next year?
Yeah.
Is there going to be? Yeah, there will be. I think there will be. But like I was talking to Natalie tonight, she's saying, oh, I'm talking to all my planner friends. And, there was this article by 42 North in the New York Times last week about small home events. That's the tactics. That's upstream of us as creatives. Planners are upstream. Venues are upstream. We get whatever comes downstream from them. And that's what they're talking about.
Yeah. I love that.
How does that inspire me?
I love when you said that, because I think it just goes to our point in this whole podcast, talking about, planners are faced with this problem, right? How many people can you have at an event in Rhode Island right now? It's 5. How many people can you have in Massachusetts? 10. I think sometime in the future, they're going to open that up to 20, to 50, to 100. Who knows? Like in the future, what's going to happen? But here's these planners doing exactly what we're talking about, where they're opening it up to, hey, instead of, it's turning lemons into lemonade. Jordan Budge talks about it a ton. But, okay, they're going to be smaller events. Honestly, when you think about it, planners don't care about 300-person weddings. They want smaller. If they, sure. But
some get a percentage of wedding spend. So
what if instead of spending $300,000 on a 300-person wedding, you spend $300,000 on a 100-person wedding? What can you do in that case? You open up, like, instead of having like $100 per plate, have $500, $600, $1,000 per plate wedding reception. What can you do with that? That opens up a whole nother level of creativity of just giving people a great experience, which is just like, that's what we're talking about, right? Is like, you're faced with this problem that maybe you weren't able to talk to your client about in the past. You'd be like, hey, instead of doing your wedding with 150 people at this wedding factory in the middle of, Massachusetts, what if we went on top of a mountain, just the three of us, and you got your officiant, and then, who cares about your parents being able to see it? Whatever. You're not close to them
Stuff we
anyways.
actually wish we could say to people, but couldn't.
Exactly. Stuff that we wish we could actually do. Now you have a freaking excuse to go out there and pitch some cool-ish to people.
Yeah, you can. Everybody, like, most of the time, the problem is your limited thinking. And I think that shouldn't depress anyone. That should inspire you to go like, okay, I can figure this out. Yeah. If I change my perspective, if I get a different angle on the problem, right? And so the first angle was, we can't have 300 people events. What are we going to do? 200 people events. What are we going to do? Well, the first thing that is a variable there is the amount of people at an event, right? That's the decision of this couple. It has nothing to do with like me as a wedding filmmaker. I don't care how many people are at your event. It doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect what I make at all.
I think the reality for a lot of couples too is they don't care how many people are at their wedding either.
No, they wish they could have 50 people and they'd have to have all these people.
They're like
reasons.
Well, I'm like, when I had my wedding, my wife was like, I have 100 family members that I want, or not that I want, 100 family members that I need to have at our wedding. And I was like, need to. It's not want to. So now
it's like
this whole situation is giving them the excuse that they wanted in the very beginning. Not every single person. And this is another thing that I was going to say too is, if you're a wedding professional, if you're a photographer, if you're a videographer, and you have 10 weddings a year, you're a lot different than the business that we run, where we're running 130 weddings a year. You have that much more flexibility to go out there and make these things happen. And it's not going to work for everybody, but I sure as heck can't go out there to 130 people and say, hey, your wedding this year, 130 people are not going to be like down for elopements. Like, I'm going to have a much smaller percentage of people that, are going to be down for that. But if you do less weddings, you have the opportunity, and more than likely you have a more curated client than I do. I just have a much wider audience. It's a way different, people that are coming through our doors. You probably have a more curated type of person that might be open to a very specific thing that they saw from you that they would be down to do. So what are those things? Explore those things. Like, what do you really want to do? Does it fit in with doing smaller events, doing some kind of like real film where you don't actually have to be at a wedding day of, and they're exchanging vows? Can you do a real cool wedding video or a really cool elopement photo session? Like, what can you do? So I think that's a good point to make.
Is we talked about initially, the first thing we talked about is being inspired to have better contracts.
Yeah.
Right? Being inspired on ways we can collect money from couples, not have to refund money, but also still serve our couples and provide a service to them. We talked about being inspired about the type of products we can make that will solve a market problem, which is there's going to be people who need a product that maybe is a little bit lower cost and they're not willing to have a product that's worse quality. Who knows? We talked about solving a problem of our own boredom, right? Which is I'm bored of this thing that I feel like I've got down and I've nailed it. And I'm bored of it. And I want to make something different and unique and new. And so we have Huxley Film and we're working on that. Even like I'm looking at Huxley Film and I'm like, oh crap, all our Huxley weddings for the whole year got rescheduled.
Yep.
We have nothing to make now for this new line we're trying to launch. How do I still work on this and create something representative of the product? And we've talked about that problem. Trying to innovate there. Okay, well, we might be able to go to some of our couples and give them a better experience than they even paid for. That's a win. And it's like, there's a lot of things where we're looking at this challenge and we're kind of just rolling with the punches, man. And I think every one of those situations might not relate to you directly, but I think all of them relate to everybody in the way that we all have those types of things where the solution is like right in front of you, but because your thinking is limiting, I always say you're a can't do person. Everything that comes your way, it's like a defeat to you. It's like you don't want to do anything hard. You want everything to just work, and you think that's inspiration. You're like, oh, I'm inspired to do it, which really means I want to do it. I feel like doing this thing. That is easy for me. I'm inspired to paint the paintings that I know exactly how to paint. I'm inspired to make the films that I know exactly how to make. That's not inspiration. That's just muscle memory.
Yeah.
Real inspiration is like doing something hard.
And I think it's one of the reasons why you and I get along really well and we're great business partners is we're both can-do people. Is like, you came up to me last week and you had this crazy idea and I was like, ugh, that sounds awful. I hate that.
Oh, I've expanded this idea, by the way, in my head.
Okay. But you mentioned it and I was like, that sounds awful. But how can we because I know where your brain is going. I know what you're getting at. And I'm like, how can we make this less awful? Is it really as awful as I think it's going to be? And, we're just riffing. We're riffing. And I think through a 15-minute phone conversation, you and I were like, yeah, we can make this work.
Yeah.
We can make a lot of money off of doing this.
Somebody would want to buy this. It would meet somebody's need. I'm not going to expose myself to risk, but that's fun for me. It's not about, do I like this thing that I made?
Yeah.
That's not what's fun to me.
Yeah.
That is fun to me, but that's not the only thing that's fun to me. It's not only fun to make a good wedding film. It's not only fun to make a good image. It's also fun to solve a problem. It's fun to make money. It's fun to employ people. It's fun to be innovative and unique.
Yep.
I even like to be a disruptor. I like to do things just to piss other people off.
I just hear the Enneagram, our wives have been talking a lot about Enneagram, so I just hear about it all the time. But it's like you're type 9, right?
8.
You're 8, so you're a disruptor.
I'm a challenger.
And I've been thinking a lot about it, even with our own team and you and I and everyone's rewards and motivations are different, right?
Yes.
So trying to find, I think one of the important things through this whole thing too is just learning how to be inspired. Is find what your motivations are.
Yes.
Because I'm certainly
and it all circles back
motivated.
to Enneagram, right?
It does. It always does, right? Everything. And I think just understanding yourself and being know yourself. Know yourself. Yeah, know yourself. Understanding, being reflective of who you are. I know for myself, I have to set goals for myself that have big rewards at the end. I'm going to go to Tokyo for 2 weeks. And I'm going to do this thing, and I'm going to spend money doing this very specific thing. I think you're the same way, too. But you get some reward out of being disruptive and being people telling you can't do something and giving them the middle finger and being like, hey, that thing you said I couldn't do? I just did it, and I blew past everybody. You get a lot of motivation out of that.
I like the idea of everybody's
and that's another reason why we get along.
You can't make really great films in a studio, and I want to make such good films that are that we just make as a team that totally wipe out the notion that it's all some special thing that one person has. I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, any of the films you've liked, none of them are made by one person.
Yeah.
That's stupid. They're made better things are made by more people. No one is better by themselves. We're all better with others. We're better with buy-in. So just finding what motivates you, I think, is a really, really key thing. And finding where I think there's a concept of little wins, big wins, right? The little win is picking a small problem that you can fix right away. That's helping you solve a big problem. Because finding little wins, if you're just picking up a camera, the first time you take an image with bokeh, you're like...
The first time you take a picture of a leaf that's blurred out in the background.
Yeah, you think it's the best image. You show it to your friends and family.
Picasso. Yeah.
And that's great.
Yeah.
You should do that. I was talking about with my own kid. She draws circles, and she does terrible circles, objectively. They're not circles. They're these blobs, right? And I'm like, oh, great circle, right? And then she draws faces. and more and more and more, they look like faces, but they're not good. But it's like those small victories of just like, okay, she drew a shape, a general vicinity of where eyes are, a general vicinity of where a nose is, and something resembling a mouth. We're getting there. And I think like you need to have those small victories in your inspiration that will help you stay motivated. But you also need to have, and I think this is what we're really talking about today, the big, like she's not going to keep drawing just so she can learn to draw a smiley face. She's enjoying that right now, but if she wanted to be a good artist and create beautiful faces, she would have to be inspired to create beautiful faces. She would have to say, I want to be a great artist. And a lot of people, they go like, I want to learn to draw a face. I want to learn to operate my camera. That's great. Okay, that's a small victory you can do. But if you don't have a goal of like, I want to be in a top 5% in my market. What does that mean? I need to make this much money. I want to get published in these 2 publications. I want to get this type of bride. I want to work this many weddings. That's something that can force you to innovate and be inspired. But just being good at photos, it's not a goal.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to circle back to, because I know you weren't going to ask me, but some of the things that I've been inspired by, and I think they're directly lately, and I think they're directly correlated with certain problems. Like I have 2 things. I think the first one is we're developing a new brand. So doing the marketing for that, understanding what our new outside of we're doing Huxley Films. We're doing Stop Go Love. We have another brand that we're developing that's kind of for lower end kind of weddings. So understanding who that client is. We'll
call them lower cost. We're not necessarily lower end.
Lower cost wedding films,
and
what that looks like.
Less work too. Like just to be clear, like we don't ever want to make something low quality, but I'll make something that takes less time and less equipment. And anyway.
Yeah, and actually, what's funny is when I was talking to Benj when we were at WPPI, we were talking about film cameras, and he was like, you know what? I just think after doing photography for a while, it will become boring because you're just like, I've done the same thing over and over and over again. He's like, the reason why I shoot on a Leica is because I have to put parameters on my craft in order for it to be interesting to me, in order for me to create something that's interesting to other people. And so this lower end product, what we're doing, or lower cost product, what we're doing is we're putting parameters on it. It's like, how can we be creative in this box? And that's been really fun to me because that's a lot of
what's
problems.
The core? What is the core of what makes a film interesting?
Yes.
How do we strip it of anything that is not essential to make this the very specific thing that someone wants? And if they want more, great. There's more cost, and we can provide it. But like, how do we? What's the like? It's almost like, what is the fundamental of a wedding film? The modern wedding film, the modern social media wedding film targeted at millennial brides. How do we serve that client base? And that's been fun. That's been challenging because when we started our business, the formula still works, but none of this stuff existed. There was no Instagram. Yeah. And so it's been fun to look at it and go like, how do we make something for everyone that everyone would want that we're proud of? We're still working on it. We don't have it, but it's driving us and inspiring some different ways of thinking. It's almost like you get to be a different character, right?
Yeah. Well, it's just like these things are hard, man. They're just difficult. The other thing I was going to mention too is, we have a problem where we have a lot of people that work with us, so a lot of videographers, and so it's going out and shooting a wedding and keeping it super consistent. It's challenging. That's a huge challenge, but that's kind of been one of our biggest goals, is trying to find a way to make it super consistent no matter who goes out and shoots a wedding.
And we basically focused on that exclusively for like 3 years.
Yeah. And so we've really gotten it down so that if you watch one of our films, you can't tell who shot it, which is great. But now, as we're trying to expand our team, how are we going to grow, twice as big, 3 times as big, 4 times as big? So we're faced with a couple challenges now in that just regular one-on-one interaction won't work. Like, I can't meet with 20 videographers and teach them one-on-one like I used to with our current staff. And also, in the meantime, it's coronavirus, so I can't actually do a workshop. So
Which is what we would normally do during this season.
Yeah. So what we're doing now is I'm learning how to put together good curriculums. And if you would have asked me what I would be doing 10 years ago, I wouldn't have said developing curriculums for wedding.
I mean, if I would have asked you that in January, what you would be doing in April, you wouldn't have said curriculum.
Yeah, no, it would be way different actually. It'd have to do probably with being in Denver and traveling a little bit.
Oh my God, yeah, we're not even going to get to do that.
Nope. I mean, it's a good thing we didn't put a lot of work into it, but
that's
I mean, that's actually one thing that we might be able to do through all this. But
let's see how this develops.
I know, but yeah, so that's another challenge. So what we're doing is we're putting those curriculum together for our videographers, and that's been fun and that's been challenging and stretching me myself. And there's another point that I wanted to make is just like these things are hard. Like this is like. And the coronavirus right now, like, what are some ways that you at home listen to the podcast can future-proof and find inspiration enough to future-proof your business? Like, because a lot of people are hit hard by this now, but like, you're not. This is like the tip of the iceberg, I think. Like, not to be like super doom and gloom, but like, this is the tip of the iceberg. Where people are really going to suffer is over the next 16 months.
18 months,
like,
yeah.
You're going to see a lot of people suffering next year, unfortunately. That's where it's going to hit. So, like, in the future, how can you listen to the podcast, future-proof your business, come up with some creative solutions so that you are solving problems in the future, so that if the coronavirus hit next year again, like, where would you be? How would you be able to solve those problems? I know what we're doing to be able to do that. It might not be what you think you want to do right now, but it might be what you have to do, and it might be what you like to do sometime in the future because you just got over that hump of just that basic learning curve. So just challenge yourself. Go out and do it. Yeah.
Inspiration is all about, I think, necessity and what is necessary for survival. And I think we can look at it in that Darwinian of a way, which is what is necessary for you to survive and thrive, and let's procreate your business. How do I attract customers? How do I keep from repelling customers? How do I repel the people I want to repel? How do I keep my house from falling down, like my proverbial house of my business from falling down? Next time it snows, like we're in the middle of a storm right now. And it's like, and then of course there's just the fun stuff, right? Okay, I'm bored. That could be a challenge you have right now. You're just bored with your business. What can you do? Like, let those things be positives and not negatives. That's all I'm saying right now is like, for your inspiration, I would just start there. What is right now frustrating me about my business? What am I bad at about my business and my art? And then where are the potential solutions and what limitations am I creating for myself and my own brain that I can just change my thinking, approach the problem in a different way? So to close out, like, what would you say to somebody who feels stuck?
Man.
Maybe we already said it, by the way.
I would say listen to the WeddingPros podcast every Tuesday.
Good one.
Tune in.
Yeah.
I think, I think we did say it a lot, is just find challenges. Find the thing that's frustrating you the most right now. Or if you're one of those creatives that's having a hard time and you're kind of going down that path of like just being depressed over all of this, find out why you're being depressed and find a way to solve that freaking problem. Like, don't curl up in in your shell or in your cave and just get depressed over it. Because once you start finding some solutions, and it might take some time, like, I just wrestled with this. Like, now I'm going to, hibernate for a second, just kind of like refresh myself and then come back at this challenge again. Once you start getting over that peak of like, okay, this might be an option. Okay, this is an option. I would say also with finding out some ways to overcome hard situations and overcome creative problems. Have conversations with people that you trust. If you don't have someone that you trust, go out and, like, you have freaking Facebook, you have Instagram. Find the people that you trust and have good conversation. Like, community, guys. Like, this is the whole point of, like, WeddingPros, of How to Film Weddings, of all of these groups, is like, find people. Don't just comment. DM people. Have a relationship with people. Go out and find people that you can be like, I'm thinking about this idea. What do you think? I trust your opinion. Go out and do that. Put yourself on a limb. Go out and find those relationships. That's what I would say.
And I would say never give up.
Yeah.
Don't quit. Never give up. Keep pursuing a problem until a solution comes up. When you give up, that's when you arrive at, that's when it's over. It's not over till you give up.
Yep.
And it's like innovation comes from people who never quit. You always hear about Edison making like something like 600 versions of the light bulb before he found one that actually was stable and worked. And it's like, I don't know how many iterations you're going to have to make of your business, of your product, whatever it is. I don't know, your coronavirus business plan, but like, don't quit. At the core of it, like, there is a solution out there for almost every problem. You're creative and like, you can do it. But don't limit yourself to your current knowledge base or your current understanding of a problem, your current perspective. Don't give up. Keep moving around that problem until you get the right vantage point where you can see, because there is a weak spot for every problem. And I would say, don't give up. Believe that you can solve it, and believe that you just haven't worked hard enough yet. And I do believe that. So, hey,
cool.
That's it.
So thanks for tuning into the Wedding Pros podcast this week, guys. Hopefully that was as beneficial for you as it was for us, just talking through staying inspired through hard times. Make sure that you are subscribing. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you're giving us a thumbs up, comment, ask us your questions, talk about some things that are inspiring you. What are you currently doing through this pandemic? Are you sitting on your ass at home doing absolutely nothing? If so, tell us. Also, let us know what your Call of Duty Activision account number is so we can do nothing together and waste this time. But then also balance it with making money and running a successful wedding business. If you're listening to this via podcast, make sure you're giving us a 5-star review, guys. It helps us out just a ton. It goes a super long way. I can't even express to you how much we appreciate it when people give us good feedback. So make sure you're checking it out there as well. Until next week, guys, thank you for checking out the Wedding Pros podcast, and we will see you then.